What's up, everybody? I am your host, a low-budget horror flick who is about to introduce the world to reanimated flesh-eating corpses. And that is my co-host, also a low-budget horror flick who doesn't get the recognition he deserves. And welcome to a Remake versus Original, where today we are putting both of the Night of the Living Dead films head-to-head to see which one is the supreme zombie flick. So if you don't know, we covered Tom Savini's 1990 remake a couple weeks ago, and the whole time I was working on that episode, I just kept thinking, man, I would love to put these films head to head just to see which one that I'd like better. Because this is one of those rare times where the remake is a lot more nostalgic for me personally, but the original is just such a good movie. Not to mention, they are so close in story, which also really allows us to compare them consistently. Also, we haven't had a remake win yet. So I thought maybe this is the one. Maybe it is time for Team Remake to get some points on the board.
Yeah, this is the first remake versus original that I am very
Nervous?
excited about. Well, I'm not
I'm
nervous,
a little
but
nervous.
I for those who haven't listened to a remake versus original, we both have scorecards where we add them all together and we see as a collective which film came out on top. So one of us may have, one film by a couple points, but when we add them together, the other film ends up winning. And yeah, I worry we might upset some people. I don't know because
Possibly.
we got like the remake is definitely that is Night of the Living Dead that I thought about as a child. That
Yeah.
is the Night of the Living Dead that I was most familiar with. I didn't watch black and white movies when I was 8, 9, and 10. I just didn't. And, it took a long time for me to go back and watch the original. And then I really loved that we just did a deep dive on the
Yeah.
remake and then watched the original. And I think it's really awesome how close the Tom Savini his 1990 was in story.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they are extremely close. I was actually surprised at how many differences I had listed
Agreed.
because the story is so close.
Yeah. One thing I noticed right off the bat, too, is I actually like the guerrilla style shooting of the original better than I remember, which, according to George A. Romero, was done because it was similar to old black and white war footage from Vietnam. And I think it served the subject matter very well. But the thing about these two movies is they both exceed in different things. And I think that's going to really come into play later on when we're doing our scores, because I think it's going to be neck and neck. And I have no idea which movie is going to come out on top. No clue.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the guerrilla style of the original. Tom Savini did he had storyboard style, so it almost gave a comic book style. So as similar as these are in like shot for shot and scene for scene, they're shot in a very different way.
Yeah.
And there's two categories that we use that are going to really separate these two movies. And I think that says a lot about the different type of movie they are. One really, really relied on a gore and effects. That was a strong point of its horror. And the other one didn't have to have that. It was more of a psychological effect. So as similar as these movies are, they're very different
Yeah.
in a lot of ways too.
Also, don't forget to submit your request for a Listener Appreciation Month, where you guys pick the movies we cover for the month of May. We have already had a ton of requests, more requests than we've ever gotten, but keep them coming in. And another thing, if you have submitted a movie in the past, submit it again, because I lost the paper that I was keeping track of them on over the years. And if we've already picked one of your movies in the past, you are still free to send in another one. It resets every year. But on that note, we've already gotten some good ones. And one last thing to add here, happy birthday to our friend and listener all the way in the UK, Tony Johnson, who will be celebrating his day of birth on the 22nd of this month. Happy birthday, Tony. We always appreciate hearing from you, and we will definitely be covering Dead Alive or Brain Dead, whichever title you prefer to use, sometime in the near future. And I totally don't hold it against you that you don't like Hellraiser. It's a little weird because Hellraiser's awesome.
We have such sights to show you.
So with that being said, here is how the game works. We are taking these two films and we are putting them head to head in 6 very important categories where we will each individually award them points. And at the very end, we will add them up and answer the age-old question, is the remake better than the original? So the categories are 1. Tone and atmosphere, 2. Characters and performances, 3. Direction and style, 4. Impact on the horror genre, 5. Effects and kills, and 6 is our bonus category that we get to pick, which this week we thought about doing zombies, but that wouldn't really be fair for the advancement in special effects makeup. So we decided to go with the ending. We have 2 really good endings. Which ending is better? So with that being said, let's head into the Horror Thunderdome where 2 movies enter and only 1 walks out.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at GrindhouseSyndicate.Horror.Pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
All right, let's talk about some background. We will start with the original. So, ratings. The original, IMDb, 7.8 out of 10. Rotten Tom, 95%. Wow. And Letterboxd, 3.9 out of 5. You were almost there. You almost hit 4.
Yeah.
Like, are we ever going to get out of the 3s here, man?
Yeah, well, I was just saying you could just guess and say 3 point something for Letterbox on every movie,
Yeah.
and you're there.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so Night of the Living Dead is a 1968 American independent zombie horror film directed by George A. Romero and written by Romero and John Russo. It was produced by Image 10 Productions, Russell Streiner, and Carl Hardman. It stars Dwayne Jones, Judith O'Dea, Marilyn Eastman, Carl Hardman, Judith Riley, and Keith Wayne. It has a runtime of 96 minutes, a budget of $125,000, and a box office of over $30 million. With inflation, that is a budget of $1.2 million and a box office of $284 million.
Damn.
Which makes sense of why they ended up making the remake, because that is a massive amount of money to miss out on.
Yeah, that's floating on like Blair Witch.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's the ratio there is massive.
Yeah, if this is your first time listening to one of these type of episodes, we use inflation to basically even things out for each movie so we can put them head to head fairly. So this is obviously a very historic film and there is a lot of story behind it. So we are going to do a quick crash course on how this all came to be. So Romero, Russo, and Streiner all worked on TV commercials, films, and surprisingly, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, until one day they decided to make a horror film to capitalize on the interest in the genre, drawing most of their inspiration from the 1954 novel I Am Legend. A fun fact here, their original script was a horror comedy about adolescent aliens, but was abandoned because they knew they didn't have the budget for a convincing spaceship.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, good thing that they didn't have the budget for a spaceship.
Yeah. So after ditching this idea, Russo came up with a little more financially reasonable idea about a young man that runs away from home and discovers aliens harvesting human corpses for food in a cemetery, which Romero then combined with real-life stories he had heard about flesh-eating ghouls. And that, my friends, is how the zombie subgenre was created, which would change horror forever. Now, considering they only had about $100,000 to do this thing, they ended up filming in Evans City, Pennsylvania at a condemned farmhouse that they could destroy during the course of the production. If I remember right, Evans City is where, in the remake, Ben's zombie apocalypse story starts out. Remember, he's telling the story about it, the diner in Evans City, which is only 5 miles away. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good catch.
Yeah. So the original name for the film was Night of the Flesh Eaters, but right as promotion for the film began, they received a letter from a law firm forcing them to change the name to Night of the Living Dead, causing the new copyright paperwork not to be filed properly, which of course led to Romero, Russo, and Steiner missing out on a ton of money and spawned a ton of people to rip off their name and idea. The film premiered on October 1st, 1968 at the Fulton Theater in Pittsburgh during a Saturday afternoon matinee, which was standard for horror films at that time. And it was mainly attended by preteens and kids because they were considered the typical horror fans of the 1960s. Another fun fact, the MPAA rating system didn't actually go into effect until a month later, which is what allowed children to buy tickets to the movie.
Nice.
Yes. One of our least favorite critics, Robert Ebert, was actually at one of the original showings with a ton of kids. And he has an interesting quote that I'm actually going to save for the deep dive on this movie. But I will tell you that he said that the kids were like stoked at first with the zombies, but once characters started to die, like they went into shock. Yeah.
How old is Roger Ebert?
Fucking old as shit, apparently.
Was he like a critic then?
Yes, he was.
Good God.
Uh-huh.
Is that guy gonna die?
Maybe he has. We just don't know. So anyway, this film ended up being a huge success, mainly from just word of mouth, causing it to spread like wildfire to theaters all over, which was a pretty big deal considering it was, 1, a horror film, and 2, an independent film. Not to mention, it had a black man as the lead character, which, as stupid as that sounds now, it was a pretty big deal back then, which according to Romero wasn't done simply to be controversial. He claims that Dwayne Jones just had the best audition.
Roger Ebert showed up there and was like, I'm going to critique the fuck out of this movie. Disclaimer, I'm not saying Roger Ebert is racist.
He could be. He's old enough to be.
Yeah. I mean, good God. He was probably around during the Civil War.
Yeah.
This dude's old as fuck.
Yeah, so another thing I want to say about casting, because I think it's interesting, but it also shows just how low budget this film was. So Hardman Associates was one of the producers of the project, and the president of that company was Carl Hardman, who ended up not only remixing the soundtrack and doing the special effects, but he also played Cooper, who I think had one of the best performances in the film. And his real-life business partner and romantic partner, Marilyn Eastman, I guess they weren't married. I don't know why it didn't say his wife, and she also has a different name, but whatever. But her and their real-life daughter ended up playing Helen and Karen Cooper. So that is a real family. The Cooper family is a real family. And last but not least, a 19-year-old receptionist from Hardman Associates with no prior acting experience ended up being cast as Judy. So half the film's cast is played by Hardman Associates who helped produce the film.
That's pretty fucking low budget.
Yeah, and of course, we can't forget producer Russell Streiner, who played Johnny, saying one of the most recognizable lines of all of filmmaking, "He's coming to get you, Barbara."
Good
Wow.
shit, man.
Half the producers were the cast of this movie. That's crazy.
Yeah. And did special effects
And
shit.
sound, yeah. Since then, it has spawned a whole entire subgenre, rocketing zombies to the top of the list when it comes to recognizable and entertaining horror protagonists. It has spawned other films, hit TV shows, video games, Halloween costumes, graphic novels, and books. Decades after its release, the film enjoys a reputation as a classic and still receives positive reviews. Reader's Digest listed it as the 12th scariest film in history. In 2008, Empire magazine ranked it number 397 of the 500 greatest movies of all time. The New York Times placed the film on their best 1,000 movies ever list, and the Library of Congress deemed it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, adding the film to the National Film Registry in 1999. The film also launched George A. Romero's career into the stratosphere, allowing him to make sequels of the movie, which included Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Land of the Dead, along with John Russo branching off and making a more comedic set of sequels called Return of the Dead, which is very different, but also very great. And finally, in April of 2026, the trailer for another remake of this film dropped online, directed by Christopher Ray and starring Vivica A. Fox and Brittany Underwood, slated for a 2026 release. Oh, God.
Yeah. I'm not hearing any good things from the horror community on what we've seen so far. That the trailer that dropped, from what I've seen, that trailer compared to the remake, I'll say because there's multiple going on, of the Return of the Living Dead. I gotta say that the Return of the Living Dead remakes look a little more promising.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how this is gonna play out. Vivica A. Fox has got to be in her 60s at this point.
I mean, I get, like, 1990 was a long fucking time ago, and it was remade again since then. Sid Haig was in the last
was he?
remake. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know that.
They did, like, one in the 2000s. Not very good. But anyway, yeah. Tom Savini stayed so close to the original, and I feel like now this is looking like it's just gonna be like a horror comedy, which I
I got that
completely
vibe too.
am not in line with at all.
No, the kind of big two that have happened, the original and the 1990, were not comedies.
No, and we've already, like, John Russo branched off and did a more comic book style comedic approach to the franchise. So we really already have had a branch off to the comedy side from the original people who made this movie.
Yeah.
We don't really need that. It's crazy. It's definitely crazy. And when you were talking about, like, all the stuff that this movie has spawned, The Walking Dead, TV shows, movies, and I was thinking about John Russo, and he's been at quite a few conventions that we've been at.
Yeah, I've met him multiple times.
And there's nobody over there.
Yeah.
Like, he's always has, like, no line, no wait times. And if people understood that this is the guy who initially invented zombies, like, dude, think about Halloween. Like, walking into a Spirit Halloween, how many zombie masks or zombie costumes dedicated to a certain movie, or how big shows like The Walking Dead have gotten. That man has changed pop culture with that one idea. And he'll be sitting over there and nobody, well, I won't say nobody, but a lot of people there have no idea.
Yeah.
This one idea that he came up with, how much it changed the world.
Yeah, every time I've met him, I think I've met him 3 different times, I have free reign to sit there and talk to him for 20, 30 minutes at a time. It's
Um,
kinda great for me. Like, I don't typically walk off until another person comes up and I kind of, "Okay, I've had my time, I'll let this next person go." But I agree, I don't think people understand the significance of Russo, and I think that that's because he's just so overshadowed by Romero, who's no longer with us, but I think that most people that go there don't understand the significance of what he played in all of this.
I think it's a lot of younger people too we
Yeah.
see there, and a lot of the younger people have no idea who he was or that he was even associated with. Like, they'll know what Night of the Living Dead is, but they don't know, like, the details
Yeah.
and just how much that one man changed horror.
Yep.
And he loves talking to fans about it. Like, if you see him at a convention, go talk to him because he loves talking to fans about Night of the Living Dead stuff. I went up there with you one year because, like, I think it was the first year you went and talked to him, and I felt bad because I didn't have any money. And I didn't want to walk up there and be like, hey, I didn't wanna go talk to him, and I know they have money to make, but just being there, part of your conversation with him, it was yeah, I mean, the guy is completely down to earth, loves talking about it. So if you see him at a convention, go approach him.
Definitely. All right, so let's move on to the remake. All right, so rating 6.8 out of 10, Rotten Tom 57%, and the Letterboxd 3.4 out of 5. No surprise there. Night of the Living Dead is a 1990 American supernatural horror film directed by Tom Savini, starring Tony Todd and Patricia Tallman. It was rewritten by George A. Romero from the script he wrote with Russo back in 1968. It was produced by 21st Century and Menleham Golan Productions and released on October 19th of 1990, which was only 22 years and 15 days after the original was released. I didn't catch that when we actually did the deep dive on it.
Ah,
It has a runtime of 92 minutes, so about 4 minutes shorter than the original, a budget of $4.2 million and a box office of $5.8 million. And with inflation, that is a budget of $11.4 million and a box office of $14.65 million. All right, so like we talked about a few weeks ago, because of the copyright issue with the original, Romero, Russo, and Striner decided to remake the film that put their names on the map in order to recoup some of the money they missed out on and finally copyright the original story they wrote in 1968. This led to them partnering up with 21st Century and Menachem Golan to produce the new film, which was basically going to be the same story with a few differences added in by first-time director Tom Savini, who was originally set to work on the original film's special effects until he was unfortunately shipped off to war. Which, if you listened to our episode a few weeks ago, you will remember that it was supposed to be this dream come true for Savini, but he ended up clashing with producers, resulting in only about 40% of his ideas making it into the final film, not to mention the butchering of the special effects the MPAA and the producers did to the film, which is why we highly recommend you pick up that special edition steelbook because those awesome effects scenes have been added back in.
yeah, you also get some special features of Tom Savini, and I go through quite a few of them in our deep dive on it, but not all of them. But he goes through and talks about some of the major changes that were forced upon him. And man, he had some really cool ideas that I think would have taken that movie to the next level.
All right, so we're going to do a quick head-to-head recap with inflation added. So original runs 96 minutes, has a budget of $1.2 million and a box office of $284 million. The remake runs 92 minutes, has a budget of $11.4 million and a box office of $14.65 million. Ratings, we got a 7.8 versus a 6.8. We have a 95% to a 57% and a Letterboxd a 3.9 versus a 3.4. So OG is coming out on top data-wise.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is the impact of what they did at the time was just, I mean, it completely changed the
Yeah,
genre. It was something that had never been done before. The way it was shot, you mentioned something really interesting, which was the guerrilla style gave it like almost that footage from Vietnam
yeah,
feel. So in the special features, because I have the Criterion 4K of the original, which I highly recommend. It looks really good. But John Russo said in the interview for that he worked with Romero and a couple of the other producers. Remember that you talked about they had that production company and they made
yeah,
a ton of
MH10, yeah.
commercials and stuff. So he actually worked with them prior to being drafted and going and fighting in Vietnam. I didn't know that about John Russo. And they were like, "Yeah, you know, when you get back, you know, if we're still doing videos and making movies and commercials and stuff, you can come work with us." And I wonder if part of that guerrilla footage, having that kind of Vietnam, like old Vietnam footage feel, was kind of part of John Russo's experience
Could be.
there.
Definitely could be. All right, so let's do a quick plot breakdown slash differences of the two films. All right, so we start off with brother and sister duo Barbara and Johnny, who are driving 3 hours away to visit their long dead father's grave when suddenly Barbara is attacked by a zombie, prompting Johnny to run over and help his sister, resulting in a struggle that leads to Johnny's death. This causes Barbara to take off running back to the car, but she doesn't have the keys, so she releases the brake to get as far away as she can. Once the car rolls down a hill and wrecks into a tree, she escapes again and runs towards a farmhouse with the zombies still in hot pursuit. Once she arrives at the house, she finds it mostly empty with only a dead corpse upstairs. But this doesn't last long because not only are there more zombies showing up, but also a man named Ben arrives in a truck. Barbara is pretty freaked out at this point and doesn't offer Ben much help or information, prompting him to board up the doors and windows by himself, where he ends up finding a gun. Once it is dark out, they turn on the radio, where they discover that this seems to be a much bigger event than just their immediate location. But the news doesn't really offer any solution or cause, leaving them in the dark. So after Ben and Barbara are shocked to discover there have been people hiding out in the basement this whole time, and this is where we meet the rest of our main characters. We have Harry Cooper, his wife Helen, and young daughter Karen, who is badly injured, along with a younger couple named Tom and Judy, who took refuge in the house after visiting a nearby lake and heard reports on the radio about what was going on. Ben immediately asks about a car, but Tom and Judy left theirs, and the Coopers was flipped over by a bunch of zombies on the highway. Cooper then asks about Ben's truck, where he informs them that it's out of gas. Fortunately for them, though, there is a gas pump close by on the farm, and Tom finds the keys down in the basement. But the problem is, there are now a lot more zombies outside. So the plan here is they can just wait it out for a few hours in the now fortified farmhouse. It is at this point where Cooper and Ben begin to disagree about hiding down in the basement or waiting it out on the main floor of the house, with Ben and Tom both arguing that if the zombies did get in, they would have no way out down there, leading to Cooper being upset at Ben for the remainder of the film. After this, they then turn on the TV where they finally get some news, which is one of the bigger differences between the films. So, the news states that this issue has spread across most of the East Coast, and the president has just finished up a meeting with his cabinet about the issue. After the meeting, we learned that a space probe heading back from Venus exploded earlier in the day, launching highly radioactive pieces back to Earth, which seems to be the cause of the dead coming back to life. We also learned that scientists have already started to look into the matter, and the dead bodies have begun to reanimate, murder people, and eat human flesh. But the good news is the National Guard has been activated, along with local civilians and law enforcement creating search parties to hunt down the zombies and kill them, offering the group some form of hope. The only issue is a lot of zombies are starting to surround the house trying to get in, and Cooper's daughter needs medical attention ASAP, which prompts Ben to come up with a plan. Him and Tom will jump in the truck, drive up the hill, and get fuel at the gas pump, then come back for the rest of the group, where they can then drive to safety. But once they run out to the truck, Judy decides last minute that she wants to go, hopping into the cab with Tom. Once Tom, Judy, and Ben arrive at the pump, Tom discovers that the keys don't fit the lock, prompting Ben to shoot it off, causing the pump to leak when he goes to fill up the truck. Pretty much immediately, Ben's torch ignites the gas, causing the truck to catch fire, with Tom and Judy driving away hoping to salvage it. But they soon realize it is already too late and decide to abandon the vehicle. Unfortunately, though, Judy's coat gets caught, causing her and Tom both to die in the explosion, leaving Ben surrounded by zombies far from home with no one to save him. Once Cooper sees this, he decides to let Ben die, opting to go with his original plan of waiting it out in the basement until help arrives. But to his surprise, Ben does make it back to the house, kicking in the door with a ton of zombies trying to follow him inside. Once he and Cooper re-barricade the entrance, Ben beats his ass for leaving him out there, and the whole time this is going on, Barbara is pretty much useless and has kind of lost her mind, which, in my opinion, the biggest difference between the two films.
Yeah, that's definitely a massive, massive character difference.
So after all that, things calm down a bit where they catch another news report which doesn't say a whole lot except that they have now discovered that everyone who dies, no matter how they die, will come back as a zombie. So it's not just zombie bites. So eventually the zombies start to break through some of the barricades when suddenly the power goes out, sending the group into a full-blown panic. While Ben and Helen try to hold the barricades in place, a very scared Cooper gets his hands on Ben's gun and threatens him. While Ben is dealing with this, a few zombies break through the door, prompting Barbara to finally snap out of it and run over to help, when suddenly the now zombified Johnny emerges, grabbing her and pulling her outside where a horde of zombies kill and eat her. Once the zombies are kind of distracted by the Barbara buffet, Ben manages to get the gun from Cooper and shoots him in the stomach, prompting Cooper to run down to the basement where he dies only to immediately be eaten by his daughter, who is now a zombie. Helen Cooper then runs down there where she is quickly murdered by the zombie kid and left for dead as Zombie Karen makes her way upstairs for some dark meat. But by the time she makes it up there, Ben has been overrun by the ghouls, which forces him to toss the girl out of the way and retreat down into the basement, where he encounters a now zombified Helen, who he immediately shoots in the head. We then cut to the next day, where we see the local sheriff leading a group of police and townfolk through the surrounding fields, clearing out what zombies are left, when they then come upon the farmhouse. The nearby gunshots alert Ben that help has finally arrived, prompting him to exit the basement where the house seems to be clear of zombies. Despite this, though, Ben still moves with caution towards the window when suddenly one of the sheriff's men spots him and aims his gun. And the reason he does this is because he can only really see Ben's silhouette from that far away, and he believes him to be a zombie. So he fires one shot, hitting Ben in the forehead, killing him instantly. The group then breaches the house, never realizing they killed a heroic man that survived the night against all odds, and they prepare to toss his body on the fire with the rest of the dead corpses. And that is the end of the Night of the Living Dead from 1968.
Yep. Poor Ben, man. What a way to go.
Yeah.
I do think that it is and we'll get into the remake's plot, but we did just do a deep dive on this, and Harry's idea of staying in the basement, man, and
Would have
both
worked, yeah.
movies would have worked.
Yep.
And it really comes down to, in both movies, the two trying to be the alpha male, but also Harry's attitude towards arguing his point. You know, I think if he would have went towards it in a much different way, which I think in the original, that's another big difference, is he is a lot better communication
I agree,
in the
yeah.
original. He's not as hateable in
Yeah.
the original, but in both movies, I think had he, argued and communicated his point better, maybe the whole group could have taken refuge down there and made it to the next day.
Yeah, the one problem with Harry's idea is, and they don't know this, but there is actually eventually a zombie down there with them already. But no one knows that. All right, so let's do the remake. So once again, we start out with brother and sister duo Barbara and Johnny, who have just drove 2 hours, they've shortened it by 1 hour, to visit their recently deceased and overly controlling mother's grave, where once again Barbara is attacked by a zombie, prompting Johnny to run over and save her, which results in his death. Another really important thing here is we find out from Johnny that Barbara's whole personality was kind of shaped by her mother's abusiveness.
Well, in the original, they're going to their father's grave.
And he's been dead since they were kids.
Yeah, and their mom is, like, making them take this thing there every year and drive 6 hours, whereas this one is their mom that's actually dead.
Yeah. So after that, Barbara uses the car to roll down the hill, temporarily escaping the zombies until it hits a tree, forcing her to abandon it and take off on foot. And after a bit of running, she comes across an old farmhouse that seems empty. But she quickly finds out that the former homeowner is now a reanimated corpse. This causes her to have a bit of a breakdown where she exits the house only to spot a few more zombies headed in her direction. But just when she thinks all hope is lost, a truck comes flying down the road, running over some of the undead and parking in the front yard. She then spots a man exit the vehicle and runs over, introducing himself as Ben, where they then kill the remaining zombies in the house and lock up the doors. And after a bit of time goes by, Ben explains that he was at a diner in the nearby town of Evans City when suddenly all hell broke loose, where he discovered the only way to kill these things is a shot to the head or setting them on fire. Another really important thing that happens here that's very different from the original is Ben tells Barbara that she has to put her fear aside and fight if she wants to live, completely changing the character of Barbara. Ben then finds a gun upstairs when suddenly Barbara screams, prompting him to run down, where he discovers there are more people hiding in the basement. And this is where we again meet the rest of our main cast. We have Harry Cooper along with his wife and daughter, with his young daughter laying unconscious after a bite from a zombie earlier. And young couple Tom and Judy, with Tom actually being related to the former owner of the home. Things immediately get off to a rough start between Ben and Cooper, with them quickly getting into a fight over fortifying the home or hiding out in the basement until help arrives, where we learn that Cooper's car broke down on the highway while heading to a dinner party, and Ben's truck is out of gas. After another argument, Ben tells Cooper he can stay down in the basement with his wife and kid, while him, Tom, Judy, and Barbara fortify the doors and windows upstairs. And while all this is going on, they can also search for the gas pump key so they can fill the truck up and escape. Oh, and by the way, Tom had a gun down in the basement, which means in this one they have 2 guns. A little different, yeah. So after this, the group then gets to work boarding up the windows and doors, but as we quickly see, all the hammering echoes throughout the farm, drawing more and more zombies to their location. While gathering more wood for the fortification, Ben and Tom come across a TV that is currently showing a blank screen, giving them absolutely no new information. Tom then remembers that there are more solid wood doors down in the basement, forcing the men to convince Cooper to let them in, which of course turns into another argument between Ben and Cooper. And this is where Ben finally meets Helen and sees the shape Karen is in. While continuing to board up the house, Cooper discovers the TV upstairs, which is now playing a newscast explaining the dead are now coming back to life and eating people. Unfortunately, they have no idea why or how this is even possible. Cooper then takes the TV downstairs, but when Ben sees this, he assumes Cooper is up to no good, and after confronting him, it leads to another fight that ends in the TV being smashed. And this is where we are starting to see the rest of the group is getting tired of these two constantly fighting. And because of all this fighting, yelling, and hammering, more and more zombies have been attracted to the house, to the point where they are now surrounded and the boards are starting to give way. This, of course, causes the group to come up with an escape plan where they find a set of keys in Tom's dead uncle's pocket, where they quickly assume that they must go to the gas pump, meaning they can now fill the truck up, come back to the house, load everybody up, and drive as far away as they can until they come across some help. But this whole time this is all going on, gun-toting Barbara continuously tries to convince Ben that they can just leave on foot, considering the zombies are slow as fuck and extremely uncoordinated. But Ben shoots her plan down over and over again, believing it to be too dangerous. So the plan is, Barbara will stay at the house just in case something goes wrong and they need to get back in, and considering that they don't trust Cooper, Ben, Tom, and Judy will fight off the zombies and take the truck to refuel at the pump. But this immediately goes wrong when Judy speeds off, leaving Ben behind, forcing him to run and jump into the back. But only a few moments later, Ben is thrown out about halfway up the hill as Judy continues to put the pedal to the metal. Once they arrive at the pump, Tom discovers the key doesn't fit the lock, forcing him to try and shoot it off, which causes the truck and the pump to explode, killing the young couple instantly as Ben watches in horror from a distance. After the rest of the group sees this happen from the window, Cooper decides it is his time to strike, immediately attacking Barbara for the gun. Ben does manage to make it back to the house, where Barbara makes a choice to let Cooper have the gun in order to save Ben, who is now stranded on the porch with a ton of zombies. Meanwhile, down in the basement, Helen gets killed by her now zombified daughter, who soon makes her way upstairs because of the commotion, when suddenly the barricade starts to give way, causing Cooper to run out of bullets and run to reload. While he's doing that, Ben and Barbara kill a cop zombie in order to get his guns so they can stop Cooper from killing them. This results in a shootout between Ben and Cooper when suddenly Zombie Karen arrives, forcing Barbara to kill her while Cooper hits Ben in the shoulder and runs upstairs. Ben, despite Barbara's pleas, runs after Cooper, where he gets hit again in the abdomen, and Cooper hides out in the attic with only a minor gunshot wound. With the house now quickly becoming overrun, Barbara decides that it is time to go, but because of Ben's injuries, he is forced to stay behind and hide in the basement. Barbara then escapes by running past the slow-moving zombies, proving that she was right the whole time. A few hours later, she is found by a vigilante group and taken to a large camp fortified by law enforcement, where she decides to join the search party, who eventually make their way back to the destroyed farmhouse. She then stands by while two men cut open the basement door, revealing a now zombified Ben, who quickly gets shot in the head, putting an end to his misery. After that, a sad Barbara steps off to the side to get a moment alone, when suddenly a happy Cooper pops around the corner, glad to see that Barbara did indeed return with help. But Barbara, who blames Cooper's stubbornness for Ben's death, aims her gun and shoots Cooper dead in the hallway. The two other men then start throwing bodies on a large bonfire in the front yard as a completely changed Barbara stands on the porch and reflects on everything that has happened in the past 24 hours. And that is the end of Night of the Living Dead, 1990.
Yeah, some really important differences, but I do think one of the things that stands out with the remake is the gas keys are down in the basement. So had Ben just listened and went down in the basement with Harry's original idea, the gas keys were down there, which would have left them all three plans that they could have went with. They could have tried to get the gas, they could have stayed in the basement, or they could have just walked, which is what Barbara was saying. They were way too slow. The zombies were way too slow, so they could have walked. But also, we see that Harry's plan ultimately would have worked, and Barbara's plan would have worked. And Ben and Harry's both desire to be the alpha male in charge essentially leads to them fighting and getting everybody killed, instead of going with either one of those other two plans that weren't Ben's plans, which would have led to them being in safety.
Yeah. So a bit more differences in these two than I originally thought as well. So right off the bat, they are visiting their long dead father's grave and not the recently deceased mother's. At least in the beginning, the zombies seem a little smarter and more capable in the original than they do, because we actually see them trying to bust out Ben's headlights.
Oh, yeah, I took that as a huge, huge thing. The zombies are much more intelligent in the original. They break glass with rocks. They knock out the headlights to Ben's truck with rocks. Harry talks about them teaming up together to flip a car.
Yeah, good point.
So much different than the zombies in the remake, and I think that goes to show the difference that the zombies in the remake are horrifying looking. I said this in the episode, but they're some of the best looking zombies and most realistic zombies out of any zombie movie. So the remake scares you a lot more with special effects and awesome gore, whereas the original has more of a psychological horror effect, knowing that these zombies are actually capable of thinking still and teaming up together to develop plans to flip cars or to break into the house.
Yeah, that is a excellent point. There's even one point in the beginning where the zombie who is chasing Barbara, he actually gets kind of caught a little bit in a clothesline, and he literally gets himself out of it and then removes the clothesline completely,
Yeah, rips
so
it down.
he doesn't get caught again.
I do believe that it is the zombies who team up together and cut the power out. I don't know for sure
be.
if that's what they don't ever say, but I'm pretty sure the zombies cut power to the house in the original.
So the house is primarily boarded up by Ben and Barbara before they even discover like the Coopers and Judy and Tom in the basement. That's another difference. Barbara has pretty much lost her mind and becomes useless about 30 minutes into the original, as well as also she believes her brother Johnny is still alive in the original, very different from the remake. At one point in the original, Ben actually punches Barbara in the face, knocking her unconscious.
Yeah, Ben is way more compassionate in the remake.
Yes.
Like, he smacks Barbara for having and knocks her the fuck out for having a mental breakdown in the original, whereas the Ben in the remake would have never done that. The Ben in the remake seems a lot more likely to put his life on the line to save somebody else's. He's a lot more compassionate, whereas I never really realized how much the Ben in the original is more just trying to save himself.
Yeah, and I wonder if that is kind of a window into society becoming more compassionate from the 60s to the 90s.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what happened.
Well, yeah,
very different.
There's the social commentary, the original with George Romero. Everybody saying, having a black lead was a really, really big deal then, and it definitely was, and maybe him having to look out for himself more because of the times and the way it was for African Americans at that time, where it was a little different in the 90s. And I did like that the remakes play on social commentary is at the end when Barbara sees, all these people stringing these zombies up and shooting them, and she makes the famous comment, "We are them, they are us." Like we are no different than the zombies. Like, and it really goes along with a lot of the social commentary that was going on then. And I really like that they still played on the social commentary, but the massive difference between 1968 and 1990.
It's really funny that you bring that scene up, because I actually found out when we did the deep dive in the remake that scene was actually supposed to be in the original, but they ended up scrapping filming it because of racial tensions. That is why it ended up in the remake. Things had gotten better enough by the 90s where you could have that scene and it wouldn't cause such a big blow up. But I did pay attention when I was writing it, and I think that they purposely made sure that none of the zombies could be recognized as Black Americans in the tree scene, specifically so it didn't, because like 1990, I mean, I'm pretty sure this was right around the time like the Rodney King thing happened and police brutality. So it was still something that could become a problem, but it gotten better enough to put the scene in.
Well, I think the whole police brutality and the Rodney King situation and how, the police were it was coming to light of them, beating the fuck out of people and treating people less than them, treating people like animals. And I think that really that scene really fit the social commentary of what was going on in the 90s, showing that, you know, whenever the people really took control, they were torturing and beating the zombies for fun.
Yeah. So another thing is we actually get some answers on why this is happening and what the government is doing about it in the original with the whole Venus space probe radiation stuff. That's very different because we don't really get any answer in the remake. I do recall Tom Savini saying that he did want to, at the very end, show like a comet or something that was like flying in the sky, or maybe it was the beginning. That would kind of give like a slight reason for why this was happening, but the original, we actually get a lot more of what is going on with the government and the outside world when it comes to this.
Yeah, we get a lot more radio broadcast and the TV news footage in the original, way more than
Yeah.
what we got in the remake. Down to the radio broadcast says that this all began 2 days ago with the slaying of a family of 7, and that there are very little reports coming from south of the Mississippi River, which is obviously where this takes place, like, or the area that this takes place. It's just now getting to them. That comment shows that, this has been going on for 2 days, and they had no idea what was
Yeah.
going on. So it's just now spreading to certain parts of the country, and this is obviously a part of the country where it's just now hitting. We get the radio broadcast, and the original initially tells them to stay put, hunker down, and fortify if you can. Like, whatever you do, don't leave, which is Harry's plan. But then later on in the movie, it talks about trying to make it to a certain area where these militias and police have teamed up and locked down, which is kind of Ben's plan of wanting to get out of there. So the radio broadcast really backs up either plan at some point in the movie.
Yeah, in the original, fire is used a lot more against the zombies, with even Cooper throwing like Molotov cocktails from the second story. Fire becomes a small part of the remake, but definitely way bigger in the original. Ben makes it to the gas pump with Tom and Judy. Tom drives the truck away from the pump, and then it explodes. Not to mention Judy's coat getting caught, which is actually what gets them killed. Barbara doesn't really do shit in the first film and pretty much has lost her mind. Barbara is killed by a zombie Johnny. That's very different. Cooper dies in the basement after being shot by Ben. And then Cooper and Helen, they also turn into zombies in this one. And then finally we have Ben survives till morning only to be shot by the posse after being mistaken for a zombie. Lot of differences than what I originally thought.
Yeah, Harry is a lot more likable. I won't say likable, but less hateable in the original. He works as a team with them at one point until the plan with the Molotov cocktails and the truck blows up and that whole plan falls apart. But they're able to talk him into going along with this plan. Whereas in the remake, he is just completely fucking awful. Like, he's like, fuck you guys, I'll go down in the basement while you guys do this whole plan and try to fight. And then Barbara, her character, she is killed by her brother. If you remember in the deep dive, Tom Savini made the mom the one that died and put this hat on her on the gravestone because she was supposed to almost die by the zombie who ends up being a shirtless zombie, the taxi driver guy. that was supposed to be a woman wearing the same hat that her mom has on in that picture, and it was supposed to psychologically break her for a moment. So very different, but very a lot of similarities. But that scene ended up getting cut from the original. But I do like that Johnny ends up killing her in the original. But yeah, the biggest difference character-wise, definitely Barbara, and I loved that he took Barbara and made her a strong female final girl lead, which was, when the original was made, that wasn't nearly as big of a thing in horror. And obviously by the 90s, a strong female
The final girl,
girl
yeah.
lead was,
A
a
huge thing.
staple
Yeah.
in horror. And so I do very much love that change.
So before we jump into the head-to-head, I just got a couple little things to discuss. So in my opinion, I think the original Johnny and Barbara seem like a more realistic adult brother and sister. And absolutely no offense at all to Bill Moseley, but I think Russell Streiner played a better Johnny.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I love Bill Moseley.
I do too, but man, dude, like I don't think he quite pulled off the original John. The original Johnny, I think, is better.
Yeah,
I
think he's more of a believable character.
Yes, I agree, and I think that they're more of a believable adult brother and sister. Johnny does kind of pick on her a little bit, but not as much. I feel like in the remake, it's almost more of like teenage brother and sister, the way Johnny's kind of fucking with her.
Yeah, and he's also like he totally complains about, what happens to these things,
And I
things
agree.
holding the flower.
I think
and he's
I've
like,
said something
where
similar.
does these go every year? It's like, how many of these have we bought over again? Like, how many of the same ones of these we bought? And that is so like realistic.
I think I've said that. Yeah. Like for our grandmother's grave, I've been out there many times, and our mother has spent a lot of money on little things that went out there, and I was like, what happens to every time we come out here, the thing we brought out here is gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like them. I feel like the original ones I like them better. So how do you feel about getting some info on why this happened with the whole like space probe radiation thing?
I don't really care about that, to be honest. I think the whole space probe radiation thing is kind of dumb. And maybe it's because we grew up and we've seen so many zombie movies now. And with this being the very first one, they had no idea what direction to go to explain why this would have happened. And in our time, we don't really need an explanation because zombies have always been a thing our whole life.
Yeah.
So we don't really need like an explanation of why. And I also think if zombies really did happen, it would more than likely be a actual virus.
Yeah. More something like
as
28 days later.
Yeah, as opposed to like a radiation thing. So yeah, I didn't. It doesn't make me like the original better anymore because of that explanation.
I'm similar. Like I like that we get something. I do like that better, that we get at least an idea, or what is the government thinking? But this day and age, like we know so much about radiation. I don't necessarily think this holds up for us. The 1960s radiation was still newer. The atomic bomb being created in the 50s. This is in the 60s. The general population doesn't have YouTube, can watch a million YouTube videos about radiation and all these different things. So I think it doesn't really work well for us in this day and time. But I do really like that they gave us something. And I think that could have benefited the remake a little more to at least give us some kind of idea. So I do like that about the original a little bit. Judy is a lot less erratic and emotional in this one, and I think Ben and Cooper are far better at working together and being civil in the original than they are in the remake. Tom is about the same, Barbara completely different.
I
So
think Tom has a more predominant role in the remake.
I think he's a little more grounded than in the original. The original, you can almost forget about him sometimes.
Yeah,
I feel like he's a lot more important piece of the puzzle in the remake.
I agree
I
completely.
do like the Ben and Cooper better in the original because they're at least willing to work together for most of the movie. I feel like the remake is like that Cooper would disagree with Ben no matter what.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
very
He's
different.
very, very, very hateable.
Yeah, the original Cooper is more of scared and selfish. And the remake Cooper very much just wants to be in control whether he's right or wrong.
Yeah, I mean, in the original, he is like that. Like his wife does make the comment, do you just have to be right about it? But he's a lot more realistic about it. He even actually at one point shows some legitimate concern for his daughter as opposed to
Yeah,
just being right.
yeah. And the final thing I want to bring up, so Tony Todd or Dwayne Jones as Ben?
Ah, man, there's gonna be people who dislike this. Tony Todd, that was just this is the character of Ben that I grew up with. It was the first Night of the Living Dead that I seen. I seen this movie, the remake, many times before I watched the original, and I like the character of Ben a little better as far as him being more compassionate. Yeah, I gotta go with Tony Todd.
I'm gonna go with Tony Todd too. I feel like he brought a lot more to the character. He made the character more three-dimensional, I think, because we see a lot of different emotions from the Tony Todd version of Ben than we necessarily saw from Dwayne Jones. Not saying Dwayne Jones did a bad job at all. He did fantastic. But Tony Todd, man, like that scene in the beginning where he goes out there and he stabs that fucking zombie with the crowbar or whatever, and he looks up at God and he's like, God damn you. Like that, we don't see anything like that with Dwayne Jones.
Yeah, and I think that may have been that came down to kind of the times, I think Dwayne Jones played the character exactly as he was supposed to be played in the movie, but, being a African American in this group of white people, I would imagine you would hold a little bit of emotion back. You would be a little bit more careful about how you went about things. You're kind of the outsider in that situation.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so it is time to put these things head to head. So I'll go first. Tone and atmosphere, 7. The original, man, it has a lot of tone and atmosphere, but I feel like they do lack a little bit of tone and atmosphere. So I'm gonna give it a 7.
So I gave the original a 9. I think that very, like, claustrophobic, just horror masterpiece, like, this thing, the original is great. Like, it literally the in the house scenes, just that claustrophobic feel to it, I think it's amazing. Yeah, I definitely gave I think the tone and atmosphere is great. I gave it a 9.
All right. So characters and performances. This is another part where once again I there's some characters I like from the original and some I like from the remake better, but I did give this one a 6 because of the characters, like I was just saying, like some of them don't really have a lot of three dimensions. Some of them do though, so it's so hard to judge. Like I like the Johnny better in this one, and this one's really difficult. I gave it a 6. I feel so shaky about that 6 though. Like I don't know which direction to go in, and this is probably the one category that I have a really hard time grading.
So I gave the characters and performances a 9.
Jeez.
Yeah,
We are so much more far apart here.
well, I thought that the characters were more realistic, more grounded. I like that Harry's character is he's willing to be a team player at one point. There's nobody that I can pick out that I'm like, that's bad. Like there was no acting that was bad in it. I thought everybody played very different characters, and they really showed that through the movie. Like, you can kind of very early on pick out somebody's personality. Like, they all had different personality, and all the actors portrayed that really well.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna switch it to, because I'm so back and forth. I think I'm gonna switch it to an 8, which is very close, if not dead on, what I did the remake, because there's some characters I really like in the remake and the original. So I'm going to do an alteration. All right,
So you bumped it to an 8?
I bumped it to an 8.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've went back and forth on this one thing for quite some time and could not. The problem is I like Tony Todd and Patricia Tallman's portrayal of their characters so much better than I do the original, but I like the rest of the cast of the original better than the remake. And it's like, but they're the two leads. It's difficult, but yeah, I'm going to bump it up. All right, so direction and style. I gave it a 9. I love that like almost guerrilla style. I get why they shot it in black and white, because they're trying to, for one, it was cheaper, but the other part of it is they're trying to mimic that war footage. And I think there's a lot of scenes where this really comes into play. A good example is like all these weird, crazy close-up shots where Ben's boarding up the house, or there's some shots where they're like Ben's fighting zombies. The one where he like sets the chair on fire and like kicks it out of the door, like those shots are awesome. And I think that it has really good direction and style. Giving it a 9.
So I gave the original a 10 on direction
Okay,
and style.
I could see that.
Yeah, like I said, the house shots are extremely claustrophobic. Like, you feel that when you're watching it. The outside shots in the dark with the zombies creeping up, like whenever they're trying to get to the gas.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely love that. I think that they all knew what kind of film they were trying to make, and they were all on the same page, and George Romero had a idea of exactly what he wanted to put on film, and it came through.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so impact on genre. This is a big one. This would technically be like an 11 out of 10. This is a 10. I mean, this thing completely changed the genre. It created a whole subgenre. It created a whole villain, which has now been used in TV shows, other movies, video games. Like, zombies even had this huge resurgence in what, like 2010 or something like that? Yeah, I think it's a 10.
Yeah, there's no question it's a 10. It literally changed the genre. I mean, it created an entire genre that has been a thing around the world.
Yeah.
Not just here in the US. Like, zombies are known around the entire world. It changed Halloween. Like, you walk into a Halloween store,
Yeah.
trick or treating, you see kids dressed up as zombies. Like, TV shows, like the impact that zombies made has made a lot of people rich and successful.
Yeah. Yes, it has.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I don't think that you could score any higher on impact.
Yeah.
Gotta be a 10.
All right, so kills and effects. This is one of this is actually the lowest score for me. I gave it a 5. And it's not because I know there was a lot of advancements in special effects, but I feel like they didn't show a lot in this one. So that's why I gave it a 5, not because their effects necessarily look bad or anything. I feel like they didn't give us a ton. So it's going to be a 5 for me.
Yeah, I gave it a 6. And, they were held back by what you could do. There was some amazing, like, the zombies, the shots of them, like, eating pieces of people and, like, the biting into the liver and pulling the intestines apart. I thought all of that was awesome, especially for the time. But the actual kills, especially considering that they didn't really have a ratings board to deal
That's
with
what
at
I'm
the
saying,
time.
man. Just let loose.
Yeah, they could have went harder with the effects, even though with the time there wasn't as many advancements. They still could have given us a little bit more with the actual impact shots.
Yeah. The coolest looking thing I thought effect wise in the film was that dead body upstairs. That thing actually looked awesome. And a really interesting fact about that thing was played by the little girl who was in the basement. She also played that part, when they like Ben drags her down the hallway. That was her. Yeah.
Ah,
All right. So we finally reached the last one, our bonus pick, which is going to be ending. And man, dude, both these movies have a good ending. And I could not decide which one I liked more. I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 9. You know I'm all about some grim endings, and to
Yep.
have your surviving character get fucking accidentally shot, they can't get any more grimmer than that. That's like that's up there in the top tier of
You're just
grim endings.
totally not expecting it. And not to mention, back then, that's actually one of the things that Robert Ebert, when he was talking about originally seeing the movie, he said that was one thing that was really shocking to people was at that time, there was a lot of kinda happier ever after type endings, even in horror, and people were, like, so thrown off by the fact that this hero dies in such a meaningless way at the last 3 minutes of the film. So, yeah,
Yeah,
good ending.
I think I love the dark endings because they much more reflect real life. There's not always a happy ending.
Yeah,
Sometimes shit is not fair.
yeah. Alright, so on to the remake. Tone and atmosphere, I gave it an 8. We talked a lot about liking the tone and stuff when we did our deep dive episode, so won't go into a ton of that, but they're so different and it's so hard to judge which one I would necessarily say is over the other. So I'm going to give it an 8.
So I gave it a 10.
Okay.
I absolutely love the feel of this. Whenever I think of tone and atmosphere, I think of that house. That house was almost a character in itself. The graveyard scenes, the outdoor shots, like all of that, I think is fantastic.
All right, so characters and performances. This was the one I had a problem with that I altered, and I ended up, I guess, I just leveled it out because it's an 8 as well. And that makes perfect sense. I can't decide which one I like more. There's some characters I like from this one, some I like from this one. So 8 for me.
So I gave that a 10 as well. Our main characters being Ben and Barbara and I guess Harry, all three of those characters were great. Like, Tony Todd fucking absolutely killed it. I'm awful with names, so I'm not gonna pretend that I remember the name of the actress who played Barbara or the
Patricia Tallman.
actor who played Harry, but they both did fantastic. All three of the main characters, great. Like, and then the side characters, thought Tom was great. Mrs. Cooper, like, she plays such a great abused wife. Like, there was no characters that I thought were bad.
All right, so direction and style. Man, dude, after watching this movie, it's so shocking to me that Tom Savini didn't direct other movies because he direct this movie very well, I thought, especially for his. And I guess it makes sense because we've known that he's directed other scenes in other movies before. We've talked about this where he does pretty much everything on a movie set. But the fact that he went in and did this whole entire movie, it doesn't look like a first-time director. And
No.
it is full of style. It is great direction from a director, and I gave it a 7.
So I gave this one a 10. And
Oh,
this is
man.
probably the easiest 10 for me. This is where I go to the storyboarding, the way he did it. I gave both movies a 10 in direction and style. I think the original, they very much knew what they wanted to do. They shot that guerrilla style in black and white. It was very claustrophobic. I think this is where the two movies differ the most. Tom Savini's was, you had a lot more color. You had, well, obviously a lot more color compared to black and white, but it had a really good color palette. It was, because he storyboarded everything, the cinematography and the scenes, the way that they were shot, I think of, like, the big, like, overall zombie falling over the banister and the way, like, we get the
Good
shot
shot.
looking up at it, and there's a bunch of shots like that that were awesome because of the way he storyboarded it out to almost have that comic book Creepshow style feel to it.
Yeah, yeah.
He literally has a picture of the storyboards set up on one of the special features in the newest release, the Steelbook release that, it just came out with, and you see, like, shot for shot how they went along with this,
That's pretty cool.
and it when you see that and you had just watched the movie, it, like, clicks in your brain. You're like, "Holy shit." That really altered the cinematography greatly.
All right, so number 4, impact on the genre. Unfortunately, this is going to be a very low score. It is a 3. This movie did not move the needle at all. It's kind of sad in my opinion because I think it really deserved a lot more than that, but it was doing something that had already been played out by this point, and it just didn't make a very big impact, man. I gave it a 3.
So I gave this a 5. So when I think of impact, I think of impact on myself as well, and this movie had a great impact on me, nostalgic-wise, but I will say that although it got a really bad rap when it first came out, when you talk about impact on the genre, this movie is not looked down upon nearly as much now as it was back then. Now we're looking at all the other remake I was just telling you about that you haven't even seen with Sid Haig, the one that's about to come out. Like, we look at those and we think, damn, we would much rather have a Tom Savini, like a real one that actually went along with the story and took itself very serious compared to these other movies that we're getting.
Yeah, I feel like I just don't really hear many people talk about the 1990 version. Like, even to today, I think it has moved into cult classic status, but even then, I just feel like I rarely come across discussions about it.
Well, I thought that too up until this last 4K just came out, the Steelbook, and a lot of the physical media collectors and horror movie pages that I actually do keep up with and watch, this was a big deal. And this was one that everybody ran to get their hands on immediately. And that tells me that it has aged very well. And like you said, it's moved into cult status. It has a much better impact today than it did when it came out.
All right, so kills and effects. I gave this movie a 9. And I am rating that off of the new version that we've seen with all of those kills and stuff put in. We get exploding heads. We get that close-up shot of the fucking farmer, the fat farmer guy zombie. It wasn't Tom Savini that did the effects, but it was a damn good special effects team that did it. And I definitely think that that is one of the shining stars of this remake is the effects.
Yeah, I gave it a 10. Anybody who watched our deep dive probably wouldn't be surprised by that. I think just the zombies alone, it can give this movie a 10. The team that Tom Savini picked to come in and do this, they studied like actual dead bodies. They found a particular tone of yellowing that the skin gets after it dies. And when they found it, it really unlocked the door and added this touch of realism that no other zombies had leading up to that movie. And that combined with, like, what was it? the fire poker, I think it was, to the
Yeah.
head,
Mm-hmm.
the exploding shotgun, the famous Tom Savini special, the blown up head with the shotgun.
Remember they were
Like
like eating the dead corpse of Tom?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
dude, all that's awesome. And just knowing a lot of the stuff that Tom Savini wanted to have, but couldn't have, and it got taken out. It's a shame, but what we got is still a 10 for me.
Yeah, well, the reason I didn't go to a 10 is because I do remember us discussing that the human deaths were kind of weak, which is
Yeah,
when I think of a 10 in zombie movies, I think of Dawn of the Dead. Like the
yeah.
deaths in that are gnarly and the zombies in that are gnarly. And that would be kind of really what I wish that we could have got, but at the same time, I don't know if we could have got that after hearing what Savini said, like how difficult it was to do the film.
Well, yeah, a lot of that stuff got cut up and, unfortunately taken out. I think Romero really wasn't as concerned with the effects and the kills, and he wanted to stay closer to what the original was. And I think that's unfortunate for Tom Savini, but I think what we did get definitely garners a 10.
All right, so last but not least, the ending. I gave the ending an 8. It's good. She goes there and she sees Ben has turned into it because you have that anticipation. Like I hadn't seen the movie when we did the deep dive. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I couldn't remember exactly what happened to Ben. I was pretty sure he turned into a zombie, but I did have that anticipation building for when that door opened and there he was. I really wish I could remember how I felt the first time I saw the movie as a kid, but I'm sure I was like edge of my seat. But yeah, man, fantastic ending. Very bleak, but fantastic ending.
Yeah, I gave the ending a 9. I thought it differed enough from the original, but was still a bleak ending. Ben's dead. I initially wanted to give it an 8, but the fact that she kills Harry, that he is actually he survives the whole thing. In this one, he's the survivor, and she immediately shoots him and says, "We have another one for the pile." I thought that was fantastic. He was such a fucking bastard throughout this movie. The bummer that Ben is dead and he's a zombie kinda gets evened out by getting to see her kill him, because he essentially is who killed Ben. Like,
Yeah.
he shot Ben. Ben had to go, like, he ended up, you know ironically, in both movies, he ends up in the basement where he didn't wanna be,
Mm-hmm.
and he has to wait it out in the basement. And with the original, him surviving the night, you don't know what's gonna happen when the door opens. Of course, he's dead, he's a zombie when the door opens, but then we see, Harry fucking Cooper ends up surviving the night, and she kills him immediately, and it really shows that, like, transformation of Barbara. I really, really, really wish that we would have gotten Tom Savini's original ending that he
Yeah.
had, where, we get her shooting him in the head, and, like, the cracked mirror reflection of Barbara showing her full transformation, and then, Harry and Ben being thrown on the burn pile together, and it just, like, time lapsing of them burning and their bodies, like, just time it's like 4 time lapses until they're just bones sitting face to face on this fucking burn pile together. Being said, the whole movie was them 2 really fighting for control, and that would have been a perfect 10 out of 10 for me.
Well, I think it was you that brought it up when we did the deep dive on the remake, where I really wish we could have seen like Harry get torn apart by his daughter or his wife or some shit in the basement.
Yeah.
Like I would have rated it a 9 or 10 for that. I love that she kills him, but I hate that he survives that long.
Yeah,
And that is a damper for me.
Yeah, I did put that they missed a great opportunity to have him go down into the basement only for his now zombified wife, who he abused for years,
Mm-hmm.
to rip him apart and
Yeah.
kill him. Thought that would have been an even better ending.
Agree.
But, we got what we got.
Yep. All right, so we are going to have Jordan add up these points and tell us which Night of the Living Dead remains supreme. All right, so let's find out who the winner is. I'm on the edge of my seat. I want to know.
All right, so my grand total came out to the original at 53, the remake at 54,
Wow,
and
that's
your
close.
grand total original 47, remake 43. Now remember, you bumped your original up 2 points.
Yeah.
So you originally had it at 45, 43, but after you bump that up, that gives a grand total of the original at 100 to the remake of 97.
No way.
Yep,
Oh, wow.
you blew it.
What do you mean I blew it?
We almost had a remake that toppled the original, but
Oh, what's
did
the
not.
point difference again?
3.
3?
Yeah.
Oh, man. What a close one. I thought that the remake might take it this time, but I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be challenging. I don't honestly, I don't know which one I like more. I can say that if I was going to put one on tomorrow, it would definitely be the remake, but that just kind of means it's one I prefer. It doesn't mean it's necessarily a better movie across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I've just watched them both, but, a year from now, I know if I'm putting on a movie, I'm gonna put on the remake. It's what I grew up with.
Yeah, I agree.
I had them rated extremely close down to impact and effects. Those were the 2 categories I knew were gonna make the difference. Effects being that Tom Savini's gonna pick an amazing effect team. He was gonna go with a much more gore-heavy, more realistic-looking zombies. They had a lot more advances in effects at the time, and then Impact, the original, is obviously gonna get a 10. There's no movie that could impact a genre more. So you gave on Impact for the remake a 3.
Yeah.
I thought more about kinda how it's aged and how it's looked upon a lot more favorably than it did back then, and I thought about, with that recent 4K coming out and everybody running out to grab it and make sure they got a hold of it before it sold out,
See, I didn't
and
know
that
I didn't know that a lot of people went out and grabbed it.
yeah, that
I
that
didn't catch any of that. I only actually knew about it because you told me about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I had no idea.
that opened my eyes to kind of, a lot more people our age viewed this movie as a vital part of their childhood. It was their Night of the Living Dead growing up. So I think it has a much greater impact than a 3. But also I couldn't give it, a massive impact. So I settled on a 5. But yeah, that's really where the difference was made up.
Mm. Man, these are 2 really, really good movies. I had to give it to the original for coming up with an idea that has never been done before and is still to this day going strong. Savini did a great job with the remake, but after doing a deep dive on it, I realized his hands were pretty tied doing anything groundbreaking or unique. And after watching the 2, I still don't really understand why the remake wasn't that successful. It's a damn good film, totally does the original justice. I think it was just a weird time in horror, especially considering, according to Savini, that zombies had kind of become a joke in the late 80s and early 90s. But yeah, these are 2 really good films. I have a really hard time pinpointing which one I like better. They just have so many different fantastic qualities that make them really good, and honestly, I could probably re-rate them again tomorrow, and they would be different numbers.
Yeah, one thing that sets the remake apart from a lot of remakes too is like George Romero had a strong hand in Tom Savini's remake, and he changed a lot of things not for the better. Like he cut a lot of things that I think would have gave it a better impact, that would have made it a bigger movie when it came out. And it wasn't things that Savini was doing that, changed the movie. It was just really cool things like that ending, man. That ending alone, I think, would have made it so much more impactful when it came out and made it a better movie. So it is very interesting that the people who made the original had a very strong hand in producing the remake. They were the driving force behind making the remake. And it was ultimately, Romero who kind of cuffed Savini
Yeah.
on some of the really cool things that he wanted to do that would have put the remake just that much, it would have made it that much better.
Well, once again, we thank you guys for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please send us some ideas for the next remake versus original, or just two films you want to see go head to head. I was actually thinking yesterday, ticks versus slugs. That's a good one. We would love to hear what movies you want to see go head to head. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials. Once again, happy birthday to Tony. I hope you have a really good birthday, and we will catch you next time.